Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Business Plan Basics. My name is Eleanor. I'm a librarian at the St. Louis Public Library, and I'm the organizer. As you might imagine, as a library, we have some good books about writing a business plan. We also have some fantastic online resources that can guide you through some of the thinking about the parts of a business plan and help you put it together. But as I was reminded this week, when I had some training for some new software that the library is getting, sometimes nothing beats having an expert there to point out some things, to make sure to focus on things you might have missed, be there to answer your questions in real time. I really appreciated it, and I feel much better prepared, and I'm hoping that this will be that kind of helpful for you. So I'm the organizer, but not the expert. That honor goes to Amina Abdul Malik. She is a business counselor with the St. Louis Small Business Development Center, and she specializes in business plan development as well as startup services. So I will come back at the end of the program to say goodbye, to tell you about some of our upcoming programs that we also have scheduled with the SBDC, and to answer any library-related questions that I might not have gotten to in the chat. But for now, I will turn it over to Amina.
Thank you so much, as always, Eleanor. I always say this every month when I teach one of these classes, but Eleanor and her team at the public library are some of my favorite partners. And Eleanor, you know, she's being very humble about her, about my expertise and talking about my business planning and development expertise. But Eleanor is an expert and very well versed in the inner workings of the library systems, and she's very good at being able to help you understand where you may need to go in the library to get the information and resources you may need as well. So I am very happy to be here with you all today. And thank you all so much for joining us as we are going to dive into the basics of creating a business plan. And we're also going to talk not only about the different components of the business plan, but we're going to learn about why a business plan is so important, not only for you as the business owner, but for those other stakeholders and those other important parties that are involved in your business's development and success. But a detailed and written business plan is going to serve as a roadmap, and it's a living and breathing document. It's going to change and be adapted as you all continue to change and adapt your business models and structures. But as it changes and grows, it's going to serve as a roadmap for you as the business owner and for all of those other individuals and groups who read your plan. And during the process of creating and writing and researching for your plan, you're going to do an in-depth study on yourself, your business, your customers, and your competition. And we're going to dive into the major components of the business plan today. And before we do that, I always like to start off with some brief introductions. Eleanor has given me a wonderful introduction, but as she stated, my name is Amina Abdul Malik, and I'm one of the counselors with the St. Louis Small Business Development Center. Feel free to come off of mute or type in the chat as well. But has anyone heard of the Small Business Development Centers before? Okay, and if not, if you have not heard of our organization, we are a statewide support network for entrepreneurs like yourselves who are looking to either start or grow your existing small business. And we assist really with two main components. We assist with training, technical assistance, as well as one-on-one no-cost counseling. So after the class, as Eleanor stated, we do have a counseling team, including myself, available to schedule a one-on-one session with you to discuss your business plan in further detail. We even have various different business plan templates available for you to input your information into. But more important than that, we have people that are able to help you walk through these different components of the plan and help you put together that plan step by step. And so I will be sure to share my contact information in the chat at some point during the class today, so that you all can have that as well. And I believe that I should have all of your email addresses, so I will be in contact with a copy of the slides as well. And feel free, if I would love to get some introductions since we have a small group with us today. I would love to hear from you all if you would like to type in chat or come off of mute to introduce yourselves. Just tell me your name. If you're comfortable sharing a little bit about your business or the idea that you have, and tell me what stage of the business planning or development you're on right now. And if you aren't able to come off of mute, feel free to type in chat. I know I heard Christine, I think, talking when she joined. I don't know if you're able to introduce yourself, Christine.
Christine. Yep.
I can.
Yes, I'm Christine Laurentius. You can hear me?
Yep, I can.
Hello?
Yep, I can hear you.
You can hear me. I am interested in expanding my floral business that I have going.
Okay. And when you say expanding, do you want to expand in terms of location,
just like
how much you're selling?
Yeah, new location, getting a space where I can work out of, and I guess kind of more of a floral event space. So
Gotcha.
Actually,
Okay.
have a
And then,
yep.
And then one thing I'll say is, if you're looking at any brick and mortar or physical location, you'll definitely want to have a business plan prepared with financial projections. So this would be a great first step for you as you prepare to try to handle that growth phase and determine how you're going to be able to take those steps to get into a physical location or a bigger location or anything like that. So great.
Yeah,
actually, thank you so much.
It's kind of actually happening quickly. I found a space that I'm under, like, waiting to hear back. So
definitely,
like a little bit of push.
Definitely.
So
yep. So one thing I will say, if you are going to need some assistance developing a plan, developing projections, that'll definitely be something that we can touch base on and maybe even have a one-on-one on, because that's something I do definitely all the time, is help people prepare as they are trying to get bank loans, as they're trying to get real estate and various things like that. So
yeah, actually, in those stages, I would appreciate that help if I could get it. I've been trying to track some people down, but it's been a little bit tricky doing that.
Yes. Definitely.
Started.
So I will make sure that you have my contact information, Christine.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
No, it's my pleasure. Thank you. And then I see Erin. Thank you so much for joining us. You are at the very beginning stages of starting a science and healthcare publishing company. And thank you so much for joining us. And very, very great place to be if you are just starting off your business. The business plan will help you not only order your steps, but also help you understand all the details of that business model and how you're actually going to deliver on that value that you believe you have for your customers. And then Frederick, are you able to come off of mute and introduce yourself?
Can you hear me?
Yep, I sure can.
Hey, I'm Frederick Travis. I'm in the process of getting information, so I want to start up a lit farm and raise like a cow-calf crop, and not only that, to sell the beef to the public compared to the market that's out there now in the stores and everything. We'll have very comparative and very good meat quality beef to sell out to the public, because that's something that's going around a lot right here now, and the government's pumping in millions of dollars to people who want to get an operation like that going.
Definitely. And I will say that the SBDC, I'm not familiar as much with that industry, but being as we are in Missouri, and as I stated before, we're a statewide network. So several of my colleagues are ag specialists that work in more rural areas. And I know that we have some resources and also classes and tools to kind of further develop that type of business specifically, Frederick. So I can make sure to tap you into my colleagues who have a little bit more of that type of information related to those farm type of businesses for sure, but definitely a large demand and a lot of interest in that type of business. So thank you so much for sharing. Let's jump in. There's a lot of information in this presentation today, and I want to make sure we have enough time to get through all of it. But let's first look at the different purposes of a plan. And we all know, and you all have all registered for this class today because you realize that the plan is a very, very powerful tool. But there are a lot of different uses for your business plan. And there are a lot of different people who will find you from your plan as well. Because it is a living and breathing document, it will be updated as your business and industry change. But the business plan is going to, number one, help you clarify the current status of your company. Are you in the beginning stages of your company? Are you in the growth phase? Are you in year 3, year 5? What is the current status of your company? The plan is going to help you define your business, and also it's going to help you describe the business opportunity that your company has. So that clarification and what the business plan is going to help you do is provide a snapshot of where you're currently where your business is. The business plan is also going to help you identify your goals and formalize your mission, your vision, and what the values are of your company. And this is kind of the paper description that you will have that describes your approach to exploiting and how you're going to capitalize on that business opportunity. The business plan is also going to be a way to help you create strategic plans as well as operational concepts. The plan is also going to help you identify what your measurements of success are. And then finally, it will also help you create a timeline for these actions and these next steps and for getting those resources that your business needs to be successful. And the ultimate goal of every business plan is to demonstrate the potential for success. And that is, so for every component of your business plan that you put together, you should have that in the back of your mind. How is this going to describe or demonstrate my business's potential for success? How is this statement or how are these facts supporting my business's success potential? And then we know how important the plan is for yourself as the business owner, but the business plan also will serve as a roadmap for owners, for any other ownership or any other leaders within the company. We know that lenders look at business plans as part of loan applications because the business plan is going to tell that lender how able your company is to pay back that loan. The bank or the lender or someone who's reading your plan that is trying to give you money or give your company money, they want to identify how they are going to get their return on their investment. And that is really going to be described by how the assets that you have for your business are going to then help you add value and create a profit, which will then get your investors their return. So the business plan is heavily needed by lenders or someone that's investing in your company, but the business plan is also used by your managers or employees if you have any, or even your independent contractors. If you are working with a potential supplier, sometimes providing a well-written business plan can get you more favorable credit terms or a better contract. So your business plan is a resource for not only you as the business owner, but for all others that may need to identify and determine the potential success of your company. So let's take a look at the different components of a business plan here. And one thing I have noticed in my 5 years of doing business development now is that there are hundreds of business plan templates. I'm sure Eleanor as well has seen several different business plan templates that are available to her at the library. I myself as well in our organization have several different business plan templates available to help you create your business plan and structure it. However, every one of these different templates that are quality templates, I should say, will include the sections that you see on this slide in some capacity. So every different template uses different language. So you'll see some called the business description section, the opportunity section, or something else. But overall, every successful or quality business plan template will ask you to describe and put information in for each of these different components that you see here. And the executive summary, if we kind of go through these different components, and we're going to go into a little bit of more detail for all of these in just a minute, but just to give a little bit of overview of these components, the table of contents is present as well as the cover sheet. We know that those are a part of any business document that has sections and chapters, but then we go into the executive summary. And the executive summary is really just that. It's a summary of the rest of the plan. It's a summary and a highlight of all of the different other components of the plan, which is why if you are working through your business plan or you are working with me and we're working through your business plan together, we will always save the executive summary for last. You also have the business description. This section is going to describe the why behind your company. It's going to describe what your business opportunity is, what your competitive advantage is, a complete description of what your business is actually going to do and what makes its value unique or the best solution for your customers. And then this section will also be where you describe your mission statement as well as your business concept. So all in all, the business description section describes the what behind your company and kind of gives that foundational background about what your company, what your business is going to do. So within that section, and so the business description section is there, and then your job with all of these other sections here is to try to describe or try to support how you are going to achieve that business description and that value that you say you're going to provide to your customers. So the marketing and customer section of the plan is going to describe the who behind your company. And this section will describe the industry that you're going into, the market area, as well as will describe who your customers are and what type of traits they have. It'll also get into your competition and how your company will create a competitive advantage for its customers. Then you have the management and organization section, which is some of those dry facts about your leadership structure and the overall legal structure of the company. And then we wrap it up with one of my favorite sections, which is the financial section. In this section, you're going to be describing the financial need for your business at this current time and status, how you're going to source the financing needed for your company, and you're also going to describe what those financial assumptions are and create projections for the anticipated financial performance of your company. So lenders will take a look and examine and test those assumptions very, very thoroughly, and they're also going to compare the financial data and projections that you come up with to similar businesses. And this is something that I love to work with clients on. So this is something that we can definitely counsel together on, is creating financial projections and of course these business plans. All in all, these are the different major components of a plan. And we're going to dive into each one here and learn a little bit more about each section. And let's start with that executive summary here. So an executive summary, as we stated before, it's a summary of the highlights of the business description, the marketing section, as well as the management, as well as financial sections of the plan. So it ties everything together and gives the reader a summary of how your business is going to be successful. And the contents of this executive summary are all focused on convincing the reader that your business will succeed. Oftentimes, lenders will not read your entire business plan. They may peruse it and go through and make sure all of the different components are there, but they're mainly going to be focused on the executive summary as well as the financial section. So you want to make sure that this executive summary, which includes all of these different topics that you see on this slide, you want to make sure that this executive summary is very, very sharp, clean, and is very, very convincing for the reader, because this section is placed at the front of the plan for a reason. And so it's the best way for a reader to quickly get an understanding of how your business is going to be successful and why. So these are the different minimum components that you'll include in your executive summary. However, the order of these sections is up to you. If you know that one of the strengths of your business's structure is your competitive advantage, you may want to lead with that in your executive summary. Or if you know that having a prime time location for your car wash is a big part of your business's potential success realistically, you want to lead with that section in the executive summary. So the order of these components is up to you, but you want to make sure that you're including all of those components in your executive summary. Any questions about the executive summary before we learn a little bit more about the business description? Okay.
No.
Thank you, Christine. And so the business description, this section is going to get into the how or the why behind your company. And not so much the how, but more so the why behind why your business exists. And this section is going to include describing the mission statement that your business has, or why your company believes it has value to provide customers. It's also going to describe the business concept. And we're going to learn a little bit more about a concept statement here in just a few slides as well. But we know that the mission statement for a company is really a brief written statement that spells out the purpose of your company or organization. And so that statement is going to help you guide the actions of your org, your business, and help you spell out those goals as well. All of these different, that mission statement is one of these components within that business description section. And so this is all about the why. And so you have your company name within this section, all of the basic information about the legal structure and how the company is registered. You'll also include the mission statement and concept statement that we just talked about, as well as a description of what you're selling. Is it product, services? What are you selling? What's the history and also the present status of the company, as well as what are some of the future plans for this company as well. So the business description gives you a lot of those dry facts about how the company has come about, but the mission and concept statement get into that why behind the company and why the company exists and what value it gets into trying to figure out and describe what value your company is actually providing. And within the business description, not only are you going to describe the why behind what you do, you're also going to describe a little bit of the how, the where, the who, and the what as well. So every business starts off as a very, very simple idea. You feel like there is a problem out there in the world to solve. You feel like there is value out there to provide, or you see a group of people that you can provide value to. Regardless of how that business idea comes about or starts, if you want to increase your chances of success and your business's chances of success, you want to understand in detail why your customers are going to find value in your actual solution. So let's talk a little bit, as I lost my mouse here. Here we go. Let's learn a little bit about the concept statement. And that's one of the key components of this business description section in your plan. And a concept statement is comprised of a sentence or so, a few sentences that describe what your business does, so what your product or service actually does for your customer segment, how it's unique, so how is it different from the other solutions or the ways that your customers are currently solving their problems, who is going to consistently find value in this product or service, why will these customers consistently find value in this product or service, and this is asking you and challenging you to go into detail. Oftentimes I ask clients these questions and they say, oh, if I ask, well, who's going to be the ideal customer for your product or service? And they say, oh, everybody, or there's so many different people. That may be the case, but the reason why we want to try to better determine who the different groups of people are that will find value in your product or service is because even if you're providing the same thing to these different people, the way that they want to be approached or communicated that value, the way they want to be communicated with may be very different. There may be a 40-year-old woman with that is retired, maybe let's say a 55-year-old woman that's already retired, that's lived her life, that wants to get back into health and fitness, that wants to purchase a bicycle. They don't want to necessarily be communicated with the same way as a person who's 20 years old, living an active lifestyle in college wants to be communicated with. The same marketing techniques might not apply. So it's very, very important also within your concept statement to understand who are the various groups of people that are going to consistently find value in your product or service. Also, why are they going to buy it? What's the motivation? Where will it be sold? Or where is the best place for this product or service to be sold or to be offered? When will it be sold? And then how is it going to be sold? So your concept statement is really going to be one paragraph. It can even be two in some cases, and that it's going to explain on a base level all of these different components here. Now, when you're thinking about crafting your concept statement, You want to try to make sure that your concept statement explains or that your concept statements and your products and services as a whole fit into one of these following criteria that you see on the slide here. You want your business idea or your product or service to be either something new, it can be something better. And when we say better, that's not what you believe is better. That's what your target customer segments perceive as better. So before you can understand what better is and start designing, you want to do some analysis on who your customers are, and then determine what matters to them the most when they are looking for your type of solution. And now I'm kind of getting into some other value proposition stuff, Eleanor. You know, I start bleeding content from different classes, but I always get excited when we talk about target marketing and really segmenting your customers. But overall, your business concept, it needs to be either something new, something better for your customers. It can be something that serves a under or a market that's not typically reached, or something that even has a unique feature for your customers. I have a winery example that I like to use for when we're thinking about business planning and the business concept. And let's say that there is a winery that's opening, and they're trying to think about what their concept is going to be. And we know that Missouri wine is a very, very highly saturated industry. So if you're trying to enter that industry, you need to have something going on here that's separating you from all these other wineries. And the winery thought of something, and their concept is to include unique wine varieties that are intended to be paired with specific local and regional foods like barbecue, wild game, home style meals. And so that was part of their concept. And so when we're thinking about concept statements even further, if I go back 1 second, I'm sorry there. You want to make sure that your concept statement is thorough, because you will use that concept statement and you really be trying to prove that concept statement throughout the plan. And so your concept statement is really the foundation and really what you're trying to prove that hypothesis of throughout the rest of your plan as well. Any questions about the concept statement at all? All right, great. So we're moving into one of my favorite sections of the plan, which is the marketing customer section. And as I stated before, depending on if you all have ever, and please let me know in the chat, how many of you all have either started working on a business plan already or have already completed one for your company or for another company in the past. But if you have completed or started a plan before, you might have seen that this section is called marketing customers, can be called a lot of different things, but overall, this marketing section is asking you to explain and describe and develop your strategies for understanding your market, your customers, your competitors, and your industry. And so this section really starts with understanding your market and industry and where your company is going to be placed in terms of the space that it's going to be doing business in. And this is also where the library will come in handy, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well here. But it's very important to understand that marketing is not just advertising. I remember when I started undergraduate school, you know, I thought that marketing was simply how you promoted your product or service, but marketing is really the overall approach for how you are not only reaching and communicating value to your customer base. So it includes all of the activities and actions that your business does to better understand who your customer is, what their needs are, how you're going to reach them, and then how you're going to get them to actually purchase your product or service. So marketing is a tool that helps your customers know that your business exists and that it has value. So in a broad sense, the market is really that total population area that's available to buy all products and goods. So that's the total market size. And that's what, and when you take marketing classes, or if you go deeper into marketing, they call that term TAM, or the total available market. And so that's just everybody that's out there. It's not necessarily your market, but it's everyone that's available. So for each individual business owner, you're really wanting to identify which part of that overall market is being targeted and why is that being targeted. That specific segment for you will become the target market segment for your business. And then over time, the target market changes, it expands, it adjusts, it adapts. And so you will need to be constantly researching and analyzing your customer base to determine if there are going to be some changes in your target customer segments and who's going to find the value in your products and services, because those things change as people change and as things in the world change. So you want to start off by understanding the market that you're going into, how large is that market area, and as you kind of come up with some of this market information, the best way to do that is to kind of start off on a broad level and then to take it into a micro level. But also, as you do your market research, you're going to begin to determine whether your target market segment that you selected is sufficiently large enough to reach your sales goals, or whether your sales goals may need to be adjusted to better accurately reflect how many customers are available in that market segment. And so that's something that I highly recommend working with. I want to bring up Eleanor and her team at the library because they do a great job with assisting with market research. They have access to a bunch of different databases and clearinghouses that will be able to provide you with insightful information about different locations here locally. We can find out sometimes how many different families there are with children in different zip codes, how many people that have these various lifestyle traits are in these specific areas. And so it's very, very helpful to kind of start off with the library, which is also a free resource for market research as well. One of the first techniques that you can use to research your customers, and let's not even get into that yet. We'll get into that in just a couple slides or so. But overall, you want to start off with understanding the market that your business is going into, as well as how your business fits into that market and how it provides value better or in a more unique way than the other competitors within that market. And these are a few different ways that you can do an industry analysis. The term industry and market, they're two different terms, but they're oftentimes used interchangeably. But when you're thinking about an industry, that is the macro level space that your business exists, and then the market is that micro level space. But when you are researching both your industry and your market, you want to describe and understand what trends are happening within that market and industry space. What's the current status of the industry? Are there any major changes that are expected? Is there any major seasonality? Or are there going to be major technological changes within this space? Or is there any opportunity for me to find a new supply chain or distribution channel? But you want to know everything you can about the space that your business is going to be in, so that when you are doing business, it's easier for you to navigate and keep up with those potential trends and changes within the industry and market as well. Another part of this section is analyzing and understanding your competition. Now, oftentimes when my clients start to work on this section of their plan, you're very inclined to start negatively talking about your competition first, or not even negatively, but you're inclined to start already, as you're describing your competition, describing how your solution is better. But before you can do that, and that is a part of your plan, is describing your competitive advantage, before you describe all the ways that you think your solution is better, you want to make sure that you've analyzed, researched, and described within your business plan why your competition is actually successful. Why are your customers or what other alternative solutions are your customers currently using and why? So a current alternative for your solution is not always someone doing the exact same things as you. But a current alternative for your solution is any other solution that is providing similar value to the same customer segment, whether that be with the same solution or something completely different. I have a client I'm working with now who designs luxury clothing, and her initial pass at competition was to describe those luxury brands. That's correct. That is, in some ways, her competition. But in other ways, it's really not her direct competition. And her competition includes those DIY YouTube videos, thrifting. It also includes the other online boutiques. It includes the luxury brands. It includes people trying to learn how to sew and make luxury goods themselves. So when you're thinking about competition, you want to try to determine what your competitive position is, but you also want to evaluate all of the different alternatives in ways that your customers are trying to find value that's not your solution first. So that just includes evaluating that competition. You also want to try to anticipate future competition. Are there any trends that you can see that may impact and bring in more players into your market space? But the better you understand the competition and what the alternatives are to your solution, the easier it is for you to go back and design your products and services and your marketing based on capitalizing on that and providing that unique solution to them. And then finally, the last component, and probably the most important within this marketing section, is describing your target customer segments, or who those distinct groups of people are that are going to consistently find the most value from your products or services. And once you've identified what your target market is, then that's when you're able to identify these distinct segments within that target market. And one of the first ways that you're able to segment your customers is through demographic traits. And demographic traits are really the subsets of a target market group. Excuse me. And the different customers within this target market group share particular attributes or traits. And these demographic traits include qualities that are things like dry facts about a person, including their age, their sex, their family status, their education, their level of education, their income level, their occupation, their race. So all of those dry facts about a person include those demographic traits. So that's one of the first ways that you can try to segment your customers, is using demographic traits. Do one group of my customers all tend to be around the same age range? Or is there a group that I can clearly identify of 25 to women aged 25 to 40 that live active lifestyles that have these various different traits? But demographics explain some of the dry facts about your customers. And then you also have psychographic traits. And psychographic traits are similar, they're kind of like demographics, but they go into the psyche of your customers. And psychographic information might include your buyers' habits, their hobbies, their values, their lifestyles, even their spending habits. And demographic traits explain who your buyer is, and then the psychographic traits are going to explain why your customers buy. So those two components or areas of segmentation are great places to try to start segmenting your customers. And demographic information tends to focus on those external or physical factors. And then the psychographic information tends to focus on those psychological factors, like those motivations and those beliefs and the priorities that your customers have. But all of those different traits are important as you try to develop your target customer segment. Now, and just as I stated earlier, you can sell to everyone, but you cannot target everyone. So you might sell those products and services to everyone, but you cannot target everyone. And while all of your segments may have the same jobs that they're looking to complete, whether that be a social job, a way they want to feel, or a problem that they're trying to solve, but each segment will most likely have unique pain points and unique things that they're looking to gain from your solution while they're looking for the same product or business. So just keep that in mind as you start to develop your target customer segments. And these questions that you see on this slide are 7 questions that you can always ask yourself to try to determine a little bit more about your target customers. And the first 4 questions are all demographic, the first 4 questions will help you determine how many customers are in that target group. And then the last 3 questions will help determine how they are making a buying decision or a purchasing decision. And of course, I will be sending out a copy of the slides to everyone, so you all will have copies of these as well. And then the competitive advantage, and there's a term that we use called SWOT when we talk about business development. Has anyone heard of a SWOT analysis before? Okay. And a SWOT analysis and the SWOT itself is an acronym that stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And this is a tool that's very, very commonly used in business development by large companies and small, that can really be used as a framework for evaluating the overall merits of your competition, your company, your product or service. And really, this tool can be used in any situation where comparisons are necessary. And when we're thinking about, oh, yes, Shelley, yes, you will be getting a copy of the PowerPoint. And when you're thinking about developing a SWOT analysis, the strengths and weaknesses for your company are always going to be internal. So the strengths and weaknesses are going to be those internal components of either your business or your competition, whatever you're using the SWOT analysis for. And then the opportunities and threats are those external factors that can have an impact on your business. So you want to start developing a SWOT analysis by first describing the key strengths of your business idea, and then also the weaknesses of that business idea. And those are all internal. And you can also use a SWOT analysis and do a SWOT analysis on your actual competition as well. And then you want to use the external threats and opportunities as well when analyzing either your company or a competitor using that SWOT analysis. And when you set up a SWOT analysis, usually it's just in a simple T form, and you put the strengths and weaknesses at the top 2 squares and the opportunities and threats at the bottom. And if you're looking for a SWOT template, a SWOT analysis template, that would be something I would be happy to share with you all as well. But a SWOT analysis is a great way to start to try to determine the strengths and weaknesses of your competition. But when you're thinking about competitive advantage, which is a very, very large component of your business's model and success, you want to understand this equation that you see on the slide here, which describes how your customers see value. We know that value is very perception-based. When I think about, and I talk to my friends about this all the time, when we're planning on going somewhere, the things that they value and the things that I value sometimes in a restaurant or a activity are completely different. So understand that your customers see value as how much that product or service delivers on quality minus the price of that product or service. So what is quality? Quality is a very misunderstood term when it comes to small business, because quality has a few different components in its definition. Not only is quality being free from defects or not having any actually physical or tangible defects, but quality is also how much that your product or service actually solves the customer's problem. So you have to make sure that you understand that you are sure of what the customer's problem actually is to be able to solve it. You may think that the customer's problem is spending too much time getting access to a service, but it could be something completely different that actually pains them while they're trying to get a job completed or a problem solved. So that goes back to better understanding your customers and how much that can be important to your business's success. But overall, quality is how much your product or service solves the customer's problem, how much it is free from defects, as well as how well it meets your customer's expectations. So as you can see, as you're developing this plan, the more you know about those different target customer groups, the easier it is to then develop your competitive advantage. So what is price? I just want to take a little bit of a second to talk about price as well, because price is not just how much something costs. And we know that because we are consumers ourselves. And price is not only cost of with money, but it's also the cost of the effort that it takes to interact with that product or service and the time that it takes. So consider all of those three different components of price as you are trying to develop and better understand your competitive advantage. Because a person like me, I always bring up the example of shopping, and I will travel for miles down the road just to have a convenient parking situation versus a store that's a little bit closer to me. So when you're thinking about designing your product and service, remember that price is not just how much that dollar costs, but it also involves how much effort it takes to interact with that service or product as well. One thing about a core competency, I'll just briefly define that really quickly. A core competency is a component of your business that is a key component to your business's success, that is also something that is very, very hard or would be very, very challenging for a competitor to copy. So that could be a technique or a way that you provide the product or service. It could be a feature of the product or service itself. It could be a component of your customer service, but you want to start trying to develop or understand what your core competencies maybe are or what they could be based on your SWOT analysis and you doing and understanding what your strengths and weaknesses for your company are going to be as a whole. Really quickly, we'll wrap up this section and discuss features and benefits. And this is something that I promise if you take this with you, this will help you as you communicate about your business overall. And this will help you communicate about your business more in a more effective way. But the main component here to understand is a feature. We know what a feature is. So when we're describing our businesses, oftentimes I'll ask the client to tell me what they do or what their company does, and they start telling me about all of the different features of their product or service. And those are just factual statements about what your product or service does. But a benefit is actually something that your customer receives from that feature or from that product or service, either directly or indirectly. So you can also think about the benefits as the solution to the problem that the customer is actually trying to resolve. So an example of this is if I was a bicycle, if I designed and manufactured and sold bicycles, and I had a potential customer and I wanted to get them excited, I start talking about, our bicycles use high-grade rubber. Our bicycles have water bottle holders. They are lightweight. What do all of those things actually provide the customer? So I'm telling the customer about all of those different features. What's the tire size? How big the bike is? It has a water bottle holder. But all of those things are just features that translate to the deeper level benefits for that customer. So what do those features provide the customer? That water bottle holder provides that customer the peace of mind that they can take longer bike rides more efficiently without having to stop. That the bike being lightweight means that you're able to maybe go in different terrains or be able to take more time on the bike. But you want to be able to quickly in your head and then verbally in your communication with potential customers and in your communication in your business plan, be able to successfully translate your features into benefits, because the features add value and tell a potential customer about your product or service, but what the customers are really buying into is the benefits that they are going to receive from those features. And then we wrap up this section just to go over a few of the sources that you have available for you to get market research information. I have already described my favorite and probably honestly, realistically, one of the best free resource for this information is going to be the public library, but you also have access to trade association reports. And this independent research section, I heavily, heavily recommend leaning on this. Talk to people, talk to other business owners, talk to potential customers, observe, do surveys, find a mentor, someone that's been in this space. But you want to make sure that you're exhausting all of your free areas of free resources for market research before you get into any of the paid ones. The SBDC, we also have access to some market research databases as well that we can run through. So you all have a bunch of different resources at your disposal to get the market research done. Management and organization, we're not going to spend a lot of time on. This section really describes a lot of the dry facts about your company. It describes the leadership structure, gives you an organizational chart, and briefly describes the work that your business does. Within this section, you'll describe your management team. I often tell my clients when we get to this part of the business plan that you really probably don't have a management team. So I changed that section when we're working through the plan to key roles. And you'll want to describe, as the business grows, what are some of those key roles that you know you will need? You don't need to know these people by name. And I know that most of you all are operating all of these different hats as a business owner. So right now you are the sales manager, the operations manager, the marketing person, but you want to be able to identify what roles your company will need as it grows. You'll also identify the responsibility of the different roles within your organization, if any. If you're using any or need any outside professional services, you want to indicate that in this section. And if you do plan on having employees in the future, which employees get expensive, so please use independent contractors when you can. But if you do, you will put all policies and personnel requirements within this section as well for management. Now, as we head into the last section of the plan, which is the financials, when we get to this section, you know, it gets a little nerve-wracking, it gets a little bit overwhelming, it gets scary, but this section really is the section to empower you as the business owner. You've created those narratives, you've described what your business is going to do, how it's going to do it, and who it's providing value for, but now it's time to get to the nitty-gritty and describe how you're going to come up with the funds needed to provide that value, and also describe how your cash is going to flow within your business with these financial statements here. So let's talk about the different components within this financial section. In every financial section, and there's two types of planning, financial planning that need to be addressed within this section. And one of those is going to be the startup cost. And that's all of the costs and money you're going to need before you open your doors, quote unquote, even if it's an online business, as well as the operation cost, how much it's going to cost you to operate your business on a day-to-day. And those are called your reoccurring expenses, and we'll talk about that. But then within this section, you also have a break-even analysis, which will identify how much it's going to take you either in units if you're selling a product, or in revenue, or in sales in general, to cover all of your reoccurring and fixed costs. And so we'll talk about that break-even in just a few slides here. And then finally, the third component of the financial plan in the financial section is going to be a list, or a summary of your financial statements. And there's three different major financial statements. There is the profit and loss statement, the balance sheet, and the statement of cash flows. And so you're going to include projections for these statements for 3 years. That's something that I counsel with clients on as well, coming up with not only your business plan, but the financial projections that are included in that plan. And you'll also, within this section, describe how you're going to source the funds you need, and then a basic description of how you're going to use those funds. So lenders really do take a look at this section, because this section is going to be what helps them describe if they're going to get their return or not on their investment. So these are the different components within the financial section here. We talked about the future cash flow statement, the profit and loss statement, as well as the balance sheet, the break-even in sales, and the break-even analysis in sales, as well as the startup costs, the startup sources, as well as how you're going to use that startup capital. So there is a basic equation we can use to try to determine how much capital is needed to start your business. And when you're thinking about that equation, it will start and include all of those startup costs that we talked about. And so all of the money it's going to take for you to successfully start to provide that value that you discussed. When you think about your startup costs, try to be as thorough as possible. I actually have a spreadsheet that can help you segment and compartmentalize your startup costs as well, and tally those up for you. Because oftentimes you think about the main costs of your business, but you may forget some of those smaller costs. Did you have to pay for a certification or specific software? Or did you have to buy a new stapler or printer? All of those are components that cost you money to deliver on that value, and you should include those in your list and be very thorough about that startup cost list. You also will include your initial operating expenses for your business. And your initial operating expenses are all of those month-to-month expenses or reoccurring costs for your company that are not directly related to how much you're selling. And then finally, the working capital for your company. You can kind of see working capital as those emergency funds. Working capital also includes a few months of those initial of those operating expenses as well. But working capital is just that cash on hand you need to facilitate the day-to-day operations for your company. And that will give you a base equation for how much you need to facilitate starting your small business. And when you come up with that equation, when you come up with that number, you want to start to determine how much of that number is going to come from debt and how much of it is going to come from equity. Keep in mind that most small businesses are going to be started with, or a lot of them are started with debt, and debt usually comes in the form of a traditional bank loan. Equity usually comes in the form of you injecting equity or your money into the business. So usually businesses are started off with a blend of both. If you do start your business with debt, debt is usually paid back through the operations of the company, versus if you pay or allow someone to get equity in your business, then they are then a lot of times fully invested into the company. So there is not the return is a little bit different there. This is an example of that startup cost spreadsheet that I have also, as well as in Excel, that I can provide you all. But you want to start off and estimate how you're going to not only source, but also how you're going to use the funds. You estimate your uses first, and all of those uses are those different expenses and those different things that you need to purchase to start the company. And for each category of these expenses, I recommend looking just at the categories themselves, because all of these categories are not going to be relevant depending on the business. But take a look at the categories and just try to draw up and brainstorm on a list of everything you may need to purchase. And then once again, on this equation, you also don't want to ever forget including working capital in any equation for how much money you need, because if you have just enough to cover your initial expenses, what happens if there's an unforeseen circumstance or something with your projections changes? So you want to include a little bit of a cash cushion to meet your expenses while the business gets going as well. Eventually, you're also going to do a 12-month cash flow projection. And in that cash flow projection, we're going to actually come up with a cash flow statement, which actually shows how much cash or liquid capital your business has on hand at the end of every month. And lenders will love to take a look at that cash flow statement. And I'm not sure if I have an example of one in here, but I know that we also are going to be doing some upcoming trainings on financials as well. And so I know that we go into a little bit more detail in that class as well. Now, there are a few different ways to determine your sales estimate. And these are called different sales approaches. And these are all different ways that you're going to be able to use to estimate your sales, which is an important part of this financial component of your business plan. The first the sales estimate approach is the comparative sales approach. And this approach is based on you comparing your potential performance with industry and competitor sales. And there are many sources for this information. That includes trade organizations, the census, just watching and monitoring how much companies are selling, and maybe even talking to people in the business, or even using the library or Google to try to find out average sales by a business type. But all in all, the comparative sales approach uses information about competition and companies that are providing similar value. Then you use that information to try to determine a feasible sales number for your company. There is also the average sales approach. And this approach simply takes the number of sales transactions that you are anticipating in a period of time and multiplies that by the average sale amount. So the example we have here from the winery, their average bottle of wine costs $17. They are estimating to sell 793 bottles, which will give them a sales estimate of $13,481. So the average sales approach is pretty straightforward. Average sales approach, I should say, is pretty straightforward, and it's just asking you to estimate the volume of sales and then also the average sale. Finally, the other third major sales estimate approach is the bottom-up sales estimate. And with this estimate, simply put, you take all of your expenses, the cost of goods sold, or the cost of you providing that product or service, and all of those operating expenses, and that is your sales estimate. It's at least covering the bottom line. So it's really just making sure that you are breaking even. This could also be seen as a break-even sales estimate. But all in all, typically you will use a blend of all three sales estimate approaches to best try to determine an estimate of revenue for your company. We talked a little bit about that projected cash flow statement, but it's a very, very important statement for lenders to take a look at, because this statement will describe exactly how much cash you have on hand at the end of every month. And then this statement will actually predict and also describe when you're actually collecting from your customers. So the cash flow statement will predict and estimate when you're actually paying off those expenses and when you're paying those bills, and show how the money is actually flowing through your company on a month-to-month basis. The income statement, you may also hear about this statement as the profit and loss statement. Same term, just used interchangeable, or same thing, just two different terms. And the income statement shows you the net income or the net loss that your business has experienced over a period of time. So the income statement shows you everything your company has sold, and everything your company, or how it shows you how much everything your company has made and everything your company has spent over a period of time to hopefully equal out to net income and hopefully not a net loss. So it takes your sales, you subtract the cost of you actually providing a tangible good if you're providing a product, and that gets you your gross profit. I always like to say gross is before you take anything out, and net is what's left after you catch everything in that net. So once you have your gross profit number, you then subtract all of those reoccurring costs and expenses from that number, and that will give you your final net income line. And finally, the last major component of the last major financial statement is the balance sheet. The balance sheet will always show you what your company owns and what your company owes at a specific moment in time. So you see that the balance sheet starts with identifying and listing your company's assets. Your assets will always be in order of liquidity, and liquidity is how quick and easily you're able to turn something into cash. So we see that your most liquid asset for your company is always going to be cash, and then your least liquid asset is real estate. Your total assets equal out to a number here. And one thing you will always know or notice about a balance sheet that's done correctly is that your total assets are always going to be equal to your total liabilities. And your liabilities include those bank loans that you have or any long or short-term debt. The equity is all the money that the owners have put into the company or their portion of the company. And the liabilities and equity always are going to equal out to that asset number. And the reason why is because your assets, all of these things that your company owns, whether that be real estate, the cash that your company has, or inventory, were all purchased either by debt, which is a liability, or by equity, which is money that you put into the company. So that assets line will also always equal liabilities and equity, and the balance sheet gives someone, a reader, a good indication of also the liquidity of your company, but also how much leverage you are into debt. It also indicates how leveraged you are into fixed assets. It can indicate that, oh yeah, this company has $500,000 in real estate, but they only have $2,000 in cash and inventory, which means that if they are quickly needing to get access to cash, they probably wouldn't be able to do that because you're not able to just sell your real estate that quickly. So the balance sheet is also a great indication of the financial health of your company. And we're wrapping up today just talking about some supporting documents, but these, within the business plan, I always tell my clients, and they ask me, well, what can I include? You can include any appendix that you think will further describe the potential success for your business. And these are just some examples here, but any of that market research that you got completed, you can include those documents. Also the legal documents for your business, copies of any contracts, financial documents, any of your spreadsheets or how you came up with your financials, any procedures or job descriptions if you're going to be using any employees. And then I wanted to wrap up today talking just with a few points about style of the business plan. Because before I got into business plan or business development, I almost became an English major in school. And I was a very, very verbose and detailed and lengthy writer. When you're writing a business plan, you want to be thorough, but you do not have to be extremely verbose. Your business plan is a first impression for your company. It's like a resume for your business. So it does impact your credibility. So it should have complete information, be very, very accurate with spelling and the math. It should be, the writing in the business plan should be very, very simple and direct. You don't need to try to use a bunch of different descriptive language. You need to be to the point, succinct, but you do need to be detailed and thorough. It's always recommended to have a table of contents, numbered pages. It is fully okay to use numbers for impact and use bullet points instead of going into long paragraphs sometimes. Also, one very important thing that I didn't know when I first started writing business plans is that you should be using third person within your business plan. So instead of saying I will, we will, you want to say the business will, the company name will. And that just adds another layer of professionalism. You don't want to put any type of grand statements in your plan that appear unrealistic. This is not a marketing material. This is not a piece, this is not a flyer. This is a place for you to realistically describe the potential success for your business. So just be careful with being unrealistic. Focus on the facts and things that you can actually prove in your writing, because any of these grand statements that you make, you need to be creating a supporting statement right after that. Because if you say something and you're confident about it, that's fine, but just make sure that any statement you made that can be challenged is proven within your plan as well. If you use business terms, please try to explain all the different acronyms and jargon within your industry so that the reader can understand exactly what you're talking about, even if they're not from your industry and market. Same thing with any technology. You don't want to start talking about all the features of the technology without a real explanation. And then, as I stated before, making sure that you are writing in the third person for your plan. Now, once your plan is complete, you want to ask yourself these questions about your plan. And you want to make sure that your business idea is solid and that it's feasible. Is there a sufficient market? Is there a sufficient market for your product? Are the financial projections within your plan healthy and realistic? Are the key roles that you have identified the ones that are actually necessary to the success of the business? And does your plan healthily describe how the investors or lenders are going to get their money back? These are the questions to ask yourself after you completed your plan. These are the ways to test your plan and make sure that your business idea and that plan itself are impactful and that your plan is the best indication of your business's success. And I think that is all that I have for you all today. I'll take any questions, love to hear from you all. As I stated, I will also be typing in my email address in the chat here, but I know that Eleanor will be getting me the contact information from everybody so that I can send out a copy of the slides. But if you all were also interested or in need of a one-on-one session to now take all this information with you and start developing or jumping back into developing your business plan, please reach out to me via email so that I can get you my scheduling link and we can set up a one-on-one. But thank you all so much for joining, and I'll let Eleanor
Thank
come and
you.
wrap it up here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amina. And I think you muted yourself. So if you had some last words, feel free to come back in.
Oh, I do see that Shelly raised her hand. Did you have a question, Shelly? Go ahead. Feel free to come off of mute.
Yes, I do. Okay, so oh, excuse me, I'm sorry. This has been wonderful information. I just had like an idea for something that I wanted to do. So I've just been like researching other companies and things like that. So I have not even got into like the business plan. So a lot of this stuff that you have mentioned is a lot of stuff that I know I'm going to do. So I'm stuck on right now, just like the concept and trying to find the correct name.
Mm-hmm. And when
Do
you say name,
yeah,
you
name
mean
for the
business
company.
name or?
Yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So like it's an industry that's already out there. So, and businesses that are already out there. So do you think I'm like on the right track, or should I just like start with the business plans instead of try to figure out the name and concept like that? I mean, I guess it basically depends on me, what I feel comfortable with,
Great
but do you
question.
think I'm on the right track, like just trying to find the name, and then then I'll get my like niche on like what's going to be unique to what I'm going to offer and things like that.
I'll tell you that, to be frank with you, Shelly, the name is usually the least of my concern.
Okay. Okay.
Yep. So, and not to say that the name is not important. And
Right.
when I teach my starting of small business class, we talk a little bit about the name. And the name is just, I think the name isn't part of your marketing strategy, but it is not the core part of your value.
Okay.
And so what's more important is continuing what you're doing with understanding what your niche in that market's going to be.
Right.
And then the name, so the name is important, but more important is what you said, figuring out what your niche is and what the actual value you're going to provide in that space is and to
Okay.
who, and then coming up with a name.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you.
And I can definitely, if you want to sit down and maybe brainstorm not only some names, but brainstorm through some of your business idea. There are some tools we can use to kind of try to pinpoint some things. So yeah,
Okay.
definitely. I'd love to be in touch.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? All righty. Well, thank you so much, Eleanor. I will let you tell everyone about any of our upcoming trainings. Of course, I'm not sure what we have next, but I know it's something good.
It's your favorite. It's understanding financial statements. So we have that coming up in April. I'm excited about that. And then in May, we've got a program on QuickBooks Basics. And then in June, a program on customer discovery. So all things that you talked about a little bit today. And we'll have some deeper dives into those in the upcoming months. So I will be sending links to our registration for those programs and a little bit of library information, get my library marketing going there. Amina will be emailing you, but I'll also include her email address. You'll have it all together. And thank you so much for joining us today.